Thank you, Mr. Tachikawa. Uh, I think the main benefit of what Mr. Tachikawa was saying would be in the details of what can be actually practiced in material flow cost accounting. And he's conducting a workshop today between 3:30 and 4:45. So when those who are interested, and I would heartily encourage you to join the workshop, because, as we all know, fabric and trims account for some 60-65%, or in some cases maybe even higher, of our total cost. So any small saving in that has huge implications for your bottom line. I may also add that Charles Dagger is conducting a workshop between 2:15 and 3:30, where he'll be talking about the same subject in much more detail, and also perhaps having some workshop exercises encouraging learning in this. The house is now, we're throwing open to all of you for questions, and our panelists here would be happy to answer any questions which you may have. We have somebody with a mic, so if you raise your hand, there'll be somebody with a mic to attend. I think we need a mic here.
Good afternoon to everybody. Mr. Nair, during your opening remarks, you made a very strong observation that you said China is roughly around 180 billion worth of exports, to the global market. India is around 10% of that total contribution, And you said that as per the state policy, it is inevitable that China wishes to move out of this. Of course, not in a hurry, And you also said that there are going to be certain categories where the vacancies, gap lines are going to be there. And perhaps it would be more than handful for India is not yet prepared and ready to get into that kind of gap line area. But as a base case scenario, since you have huge experience in this line, as a low-hanging fruit, what are the categories where you see that, broadly speaking, the opportunity is going to come in the first phase? Kindly elaborate on that.
I'd be happy to meet with you immediately after this to talk about this in more detail. But I would appreciate, I mentioned that example to set the context for the speakers to follow. I would appreciate that the questions be directed to the individual speakers, but I'd be more than happy to meet you immediately after this to clarify that. Any questions for the individual speakers based on their presentation or anything else you would like them to throw any light on? So you had a question.
Please identify yourself before the question. I'm Nishit Saad from Fancy Fashions, and Mr. Jain was saying about the width of the fabric, which plays a very vital role. I totally agree, but unfortunately in our country we have mills who cannot promise what width we are going to get until the fabric doesn't come to your store. So the averages which are taken by our CAD or whatever, we have to assume it's going to be 54 or it's going to be 53. And when the fabric actually comes, it's probably not what you have calculated. So either you're in short of it or it's in excess. And if it's short, you can't expect to get more fabric. And if it is in excess, it's your wastage. So how do you control it?
Yeah, sure. I can hear, yeah. Like, this question is very practical and very valid question in today's situation in India. Because most of the people are complaining about this width of fabric. But contrary to this, how we are discussing with this fabric supplier and how accurately we are getting the fabric. Because plus minus 1 inch is fine. If it is coming more, then of course it's a big loss. If you see what is the reason for the width of change in fabric width, mainly it's maybe different APIs or difference in shrinkages. There is no other reason as far as technical aspects are concerned for the fabric making. Now, if they are committed to give the fabric plus minus 1 inch, more than that, we have to have a concept of understanding to make it debit, to return, to make a more pressurized form. Number one, which may take huge longer time. Second point is, as far as utilization is concerned, the major emphasis is that if fabric is coming in different widths, are we taking a benefit of that in making more garments, cutting the more pieces? Because half inch when you change the marker, how much impact is going to make on your utilization? That is the second point which we can thought of and which we can make a better practices. Yeah.
Well, my question is, if I have 1,000 pieces to make,
Yeah.
the buyers, most of them today, they will not take plus. They will only take 1,000 pieces.
Right.
If it is less, there also they have, it should not be less than 3% or 5%.
Right, right.
So we can't ship more. So if I reduce my averages and if I have excess fabric, they're not willing to take it.
Agreed.
So
I
what do
agree.
we do with the excess fabric? It's of no use for us.
So if it is like plus minus 1 inch, then
I
It is-
agree, I agree plus
Just-
minus
just,
one.
uh,
but
one,
to-
one, one point on this. See, what you are saying, when what mill send, there may be variations. And as Surinder said, there is a long-term process. How do you change that?
The
But
biggest-
what he is saying, by once a variation comes, how do you put your markers? For every width, there should be a separate marker to ensure that your utilization is maximum. Right? What point you are saying, I think,
No,
is a
I
very
agree.
valid point and a
The
practical
biggest
point.
problem today we are facing is we do not have mills which are good enough to give us quality fabric.
But I'll support the point which is being made. Precisely because of that, you should do width segregation for incoming fabric. In fact, supposing you had mills which gave you a guaranteed fabric width, you won't need to do width segregation because every fabric is guaranteed. Because you have inconsistent widths coming in, that is the reason why you should be doing width segregation.
No, we are
Because-
doing that. We are doing that.
No, because there is some saving of fabric. The second point
Absolutely.
of what you made is, as far as the buyer is concerned, normally buyers give you a band. And if you can increase, so many people have shown in the presentations, that if you can increase your cut to ship ratio even by 1% or 2%, it has very good implications for your bottom line.
No, I agree with that. But the biggest problem today is we do not have mills who are able to give us good fabric on time. And the biggest problem today is they say, okay, we will give you 1,000 meters. You have to take plus minus 5%, 3%. And if you want to give them debits, they say, okay, in future we will not work with you. How do you go about it? I mean, you say, okay, I will not come to you, I'll go to somebody else. But the other person is worse. I mean, the biggest challenge today is procuring fabric in this country.
Kapoor sir, you were saying something?
No, that is true, but that you all cannot control Bill to give you the correct answer. This is what he is saying.
What Mr. Kapoor was saying, give them debits. Okay, I will give them debits. They'll say, thank you very much, we're not coming back to you.
I think, Mr. Kesar, maybe in future sessions you should have some representatives from the textile industry also here, so they can hear firsthand as to what the problem we are facing.
My question is both to Prashant and Charles. When we see the process of consulting, so far what we've seen, there's been a lot of focus on how to train an operator, how to do that. What Mr. Kapoor spoke, today running a apparel industry, I think the focus on an operator is overdone in the industry. The focus in the middle management and the upper management is almost not there. And when we talk about consultation, what we really see also is that consulting agencies will spend X amount of time at a bottom line, prove you something small, and they then leave it up to the organization to take it forward, which is not possible. Because the major part is not even touched. And even when we saw your program, there was no conversation, or you didn't even touch the topic about the middle management, the higher management. How do you expect the organization to achieve any level without touching the 99.999% issues?
Just to answer specifically on your, I think in the presentation, Tony ji, when we start turnaround consulting, first process we touch is not training. We touch first is planning, and then middle and top management training. And then you come to shop floor where you have processes being implemented, layouts being changed, because worker training is the last process that you touch. In worker, what Mr. Kapoor in morning talked about, that first hour efficiency. So we, instead of first training, we monitor where you are missing on efficiencies. So start monitoring those aspects and then improvement, and then finally you have to work on training to improve at all levels. So this is a process involved in implementation. That's why whenever these consulting is done, it's not a 2 or 3 months process. We say that minimum 9 months for any consulting process, minimum 9 months, because depending on the priority, every aspect which we are talking about has to be touched. If you want to come and then bombard on for 3 months, I am only looking for industrial engineering department. One can do that. But I think that's why it's a 9 to 10 months process where you touch all these aspects. And as I also told you, where my involvement gets into when we do these kind of consulting project is people management. You are trying to implement something, but middle and top management training is not there, so they don't have a buy-in. So as you rightly said, middle and top management training is the must, is the first thing that one should do.
I think probably differently. I'm with him on the idea, but I think differently in the approach. If you look at today, you know, like with all the design or work methods and all that, right? Everything is happening after fact. You already submit the price. There are some things that compose work method. We call them classification of movement. There's no engineering until today, I've been saying focus on classification of movement. Before even I start educating people about what to look for it. The successful story we got in a Korean company called Kwang Lim, we established what we call forbidden movements. It means there are five issues that you relate any work method, doesn't matter the style, doesn't matter the practice, and we standardize elemental activity related to how we compose operation. Doesn't matter the style, doesn't matter the operation. It became a culture in a company where even before moving into lean manufacturing, before changing all this, we start engaging supervisor, educating him about those motions. There are 5 motions, not too complicated. All those motions are related to fingers and wrists, to forearm, to shoulders, and to elbow. If you look at work method, how they're designed, they're based on distances. The longest the distance is, the longest the time takes. So when we standardize those, because it was a language that easy for a supervisor or production manager or an operator to understand it. When we start designing this and all that, I will tell you honestly, we talk about machine utilization. One thing in India I don't like when people compare machine man. We're not automated industry here. We are human. It means sometimes, you know, if I look at, you know, today in lean manufacturing, we calculate by revenue per square footage. You're talking about optimization, we're talking about space, equipment, people, fabric, methods, whatever it is. So to come back to this, you know, designing work method after fact is not going to work lead you to the cost. So it means there are fundamental thing comes from true engineering where people can adopt it and learn it in very basic way in order for you to discipline, because a process cannot improve because a process is composed, your target is composed of work method implemented into a process is engaged, is affected by the way how you feed them, the way how you change machinery, the way, you know, that's what I'm going to talk in the afternoon. We have changed completely the way industrial engineering work in the garment apparel industry. You will see we design value engineering, nobody can break it, and if those value engineers are monitored by people, which takes only 350 minutes to educate a supervisor line people. But the issue comes back again. What's the beauty of we train supervisor if her boss is not aware of it? What's the beauty to have an engineer and equality if the production manager doesn't understand the real qualification of an engineer and equality? So it's interrelated activity and all that. Definitely like a consultant, sorry about the question, it's too long, but because there's so many factors, you know, related to this. When it comes to consultancy, I never believed in lobbying because I believe if like Bangladesh, mostly they tell me, no, Charles, you do, we all follow here. We're not looking for robots. We want people to become a problem detector and problem solver. So it means, if today I'm able to educate somebody in a practical way and show them the way forward and they cannot take it forward, you can't put a gun in somebody's head and tell them, look, because I'm a consultant here, you have to change, you know. At the end of the day, is the factor makes the change, not us. I don't believe in lobbying at all. But where I found the weaknesses came from, it came mostly is because senior management never been involved. Senior management never been involved in the whole action that we take it to the line people all the way. And this is the big gap that we missed in between. Probably one, because there was no strategic approach to the whole thing. Second, probably because the owner mostly they're counting on increasing peace at the end of the day. So the whole objective were upside down.
Just very quick question and a very simple one. What is the benchmark of the training time in terms of that we should be giving every worker at different levels? So how many hours should we be benchmarking for a unskilled or a worker level training? How many hours should it be on mid-level, and how many hours in a year, whatever way, from your experience from India, that you could give us, or otherwise?
Just on worker level, we have been doing for so many years. Initially, to achieve a worker with 30% efficiency, actually 30-35% efficiency, you need 25 to 30 days training. And
I'm sorry, I want to rephrase that. I'm not talking about creating a worker. I'm just talking about existing workers in the factory. That what companies should be targeting, that we should be training. How many hours should we be spending on every worker in our company? On training, retraining, on new concepts, on new things. It's a continuous. What's the benchmark on a world-class organization to spend on time of retraining in a year?
normally existing workers, wherever we have trained, it's more about stamina building on the floor. So we don't take them onto classroom. Existing workers, there are trainers assigned to, suppose 10 workers, one trainer is assigned. There are graphs built every day in terms of how the improvement is happening. You monitor their movements and tell them how it can be improved. So for workers, it's not that 2 hours per day or 10 hours per week you have to take out and give training. It's normally of workers who are already existing there. It's a stamina building on the floor. And sometimes workers take 3 months, 4 months, because depending on to what efficiency levels you have to take them. I think if I am...
It's a good question, and it's also a difficult question to answer because it depends on what training you're talking about, what level you want to take. But just as a benchmark, if a worker is expected to work 25 days a month and 8 hours a day, and therefore that's 200 hours a month or 2,400 hours a year, what are the number of hours of those 2,400 hours per worker do you think should be a benchmark devoted to training for the year?
Yeah, that's more articulate.
Yeah. Do you have specific
answer for this? It's a benchmark we're talking.
Yeah, just what should we have done?
You know, I believe in something. It's called TWI.
It's a continuous process. You have to evaluate and wherever it is needed, you have to do it in a very effective manner. It may be even
what he's asking, like if you have done for so many years, is there a benchmark for this? That's what I mean.
You know, can I answer you? Very easy. I wrote so many books. I did a lot of education program for university and school, so I could tell you exactly. There's something called TWI when it comes to the garment industry. It means training with the industry, being developed since the first war even. You know, because people used to die, they need to adapt them immediately, you know, into training. The issue is, if we know what we need to train them on, that's a big key. To train them on, for me, practically son, is supervised doesn't take over 360 minutes in knowledge. There's 3 kinds of knowledge. We call them body of knowledge. There's fundamental, relate to your own company as a foundation. There is knowledge that relate to manufacturing, like work methods and all that. And there's job specific. The fundamental done when you recruit people, probably they don't like the company, they will leave. But the other parts, they're done all in practical. Can take up to 360 minutes. Operate never takes more than 3-4 days. Even fresh new people. It's the way how you adapt it, it's the way how you integrate. But these are the benchmarks that we've been dealing with so far. Management usually, we don't have courses for management. We recruit management not based on experience, mostly based on the way how they react against issues that challenge the company. That's the most important for great manager and leader.
Okay, we have time for maybe a couple of more questions, but let's take it from the front bench to the back. Any more questions from anybody else? Okay, then it's my pleasant duty to thank all our distinguished speakers and invite you all to join us, everybody, for lunch. I'm sorry, there is one question here. Unfortunately, again from the front bench. We'll take it.
My name is Sunil Chauhan, QMS implementations. I just want to understand what is the difference between educating and training, and how do we classify? Do we classify educationing to the management level, top, middle, bottom? And we do the training classification to the machining part of the operators? Would there be a classification between the two subjects? Because what I've learned over a period of time and experienced, that training is usually imparted for mechanical operations, mechanical work, which we do on a day-to-day basis. And can we segregate the two?
It's the same thing people ask me, what's the difference between seminar, conference, and workshop? They all have knowledge, they all have fundamental things and all that, but when it comes to training, we call it practical training. It means when we take those knowledge and we adapt them into the job function. So they turn into job specifics, right? She's the right person to answer.